She needed to get into the palace without being seen. The palace district of Alexandria was controlled by her brother's forces. Soldiers loyal to Ptolemy XIII and his advisors stood at every entrance. If she arrived openly, she would be arrested before she could speak a word. If she sent a message asking for a meeting, Pothinus and Achilles would intercept it and ensure Caesar heard only their version of events. She had one chance, and she had to take it tonight. According to the ancient historian Plutarch, writing about a century after these events, Cleopatra recruited a Sicilian merchant named Apollodorus, a man she trusted completely. She had herself rolled inside a large carpet, or possibly a linen sack. The ancient sources differ slightly, and Apollodorus carried her through the palace gates, presenting himself as a merchant delivering goods to Caesar as a gift. Roman guards, seeing only a merchant with a bundle of cloth, let him through. Apollodorus carried the bundle to Caesar's private quarters. He unrolled it on the floor, and Cleopatra stood up. Julius Caesar was 52 years old. He had conquered Gaul, crossed the Rubicon, defeated Pompey, and made himself the most powerful man in the Roman world. He had met kings, senators, generals, and philosophers. He was not easily surprised, but by every ancient account, the woman who unrolled herself from that carpet surprised him completely. What passed between them that first night is not recorded. No transcript survives, no eyewitness account. What we know is that they talked through the night, and by morning, something had shifted. Caesar, who had arrived in Egypt planning to collect Rome's debts, settle a minor dynastic dispute, and leave, was still there, still talking to Cleopatra. Already, according to Plutarch, captivated. What was it about her? The ancient sources are careful to note that Cleopatra was not conventionally beautiful in the way the idealized portraits suggest. Plutarch writes explicitly that her beauty was not so remarkable that it could not be compared, but that being with her was irresistible. Her voice, he says, was like a many-stringed instrument. Her ability to switch languages, to find precisely the right register for every conversation, to make the person she was speaking to feel understood. This was the quality that set her apart. Caesar was one of the most intelligent and educated men of his era. He had met no one like her, and she had spent her entire life preparing to meet someone like him. The political calculation was clear on both sides. Caesar needed Egypt's wealth, grain, gold, and resources to fund his ambitions back in Rome. Cleopatra needed Caesar's military power to take back her throne. But the ancient sources suggest something beyond pure calculation. Caesar, who had numerous political relationships with women throughout his life, appears to have genuinely fallen for Cleopatra. And Cleopatra, who understood power as deeply as any ruler of her time, appears to have found in Caesar the one Roman whose intelligence matched her own. When morning came, Caesar sent for Ptolemy XIII. The young king arrived at the palace and found his sister already there, standing beside the most powerful man in the world. Ptolemy reportedly burst into tears of rage, tore his diadem from his head, and threw it on the floor. Caesar's soldiers had to restrain him from leaving. Caesar announced calmly that he had reviewed the situation and would be mediating the dispute between the two siblings. For now, they would both remain in the palace under his protection. Pothinus understood immediately what had happened. Caesar and Cleopatra had formed an alliance. The carefully constructed plan to present Ptolemy XIII as Egypt's legitimate sole ruler, with Pothinus himself as the power behind the throne, was collapsing. He began to work against them both. He sent secret messages to Achilles, the army commander who was camped outside Alexandria with most of Egypt's military forces. The message was simple: bring the army, lay siege to Alexandria, force Caesar's hand. Achilles marched. 20,000 soldiers and 2,000 cavalry moved on Alexandria. Caesar found himself besieged in the palace district of Alexandria with a small Roman force, two feuding Egyptian royals, and the most dangerous and complicated woman he had ever met. The siege of Alexandria was brutal and chaotic. Caesar, outnumbered, was forced to fight a guerrilla urban war while simultaneously trying to maintain control of the harbor, his only potential route for receiving reinforcements or escaping if necessary. In one of the most controversial decisions of his career, he ordered ships in the harbor burned to prevent them falling into Egyptian hands. The fire spread. Ancient accounts suggest it reached the waterfront warehouses that, some historians believe, contained scrolls from the Great Library of Alexandria. Whether the library itself burned or only these warehouses has been debated for centuries. What is certain is that books were lost that night, irreplaceable works of ancient knowledge, consumed by a fire started by the greatest general of the age, besieged in a foreign city because of a woman he had met less than 48 hours earlier. Through the siege, Cleopatra and Caesar were confined together in the palace district. Weeks stretched into months. It was during this period, the winter of 48 to 47 BC, that their relationship deepened from political alliance to something more personal. Cleopatra became pregnant. The child, if Caesar's, and she would later claim publicly that he was, would be the son of the Queen of Egypt and the master of Rome. The most politically significant pregnancy in the ancient world. Meanwhile, the siege ground on. Cleopatra's younger sister Arsinoe escaped from the palace and defected to the Egyptian forces, presenting herself as an alternative queen, a way for the Egyptian army to fight without defending the increasingly unpopular Ptolemy XIII. It was a family betrayal that Cleopatra would remember for the rest of her life. Roman reinforcements finally arrived in the spring of 47 BC. Caesar broke out of the palace district. In the ensuing battle, Ptolemy XIII fled and drowned in the Nile, weighed down, ancient sources say, by his golden armor. He was 15 years old. He had been queen barely 3 years. He had been a pawn of his advisors his entire life. He died a boy who had briefly been a pharaoh and had never really been anything at all. Cleopatra was queen of Egypt. Caesar had given her back her throne, and she was carrying his child. Next episode. What happened when the most powerful couple in the ancient world went sailing on the Nile, and what it cost them both. Subscribe so you don't miss it.